Recently, the federal government presented its 2022 annual budget, the first since the new Liberal NDP agreement was minted just a few weeks ago. Indeed, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland has promised some treats for Canadians, but the budget is still thinner than had been expected. The deficit is expected to be $52.8 billion this year, and the debt is projected to hit a whopping $1.2 trillion by the end of the fiscal year. So what are some of the new funding promises? Well, they include a new dental care program, offering a tax-free first home savings account for first-time home buyers, and earmarking $8 billion for defense spending over the next 5 years. There was also a one-time business tax of 15% on banks and life insurers above $1 billion, which should generate some much-needed revenue. So exactly what did the budget contain? What does it mean for the average Canadian and Canadian family? For how long will Canada be running a deficit? And, of course, just how we're going to pay for it all. Well, joining me now for an analysis of the new budget is Kris Sims, BC Director at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and David Clement, North American Affairs Manager for the Consumer Choice Centre and a regular contributor here on Counterpoint. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for joining me. And I want to clarify one thing I said in the opener. I said that this new one-time business tax would generate some much-needed revenue. And that's not my opinion. It's much-needed revenue to pay for a lot of these promises, just so that we're clear. I'm not advocating for more revenue for the government. Anyhow, okay, so let's talk about that business tax. David, it's called the Canada Recovery Dividend, a one-time 15% tax on businesses. How do you feel Bay Street and will receive this, and how will businesses be impacted?
I mean, I think it's still unclear as to the extent of the impact. I think for those banks and life insurance companies, those costs are probably going to be passed down onto consumers or investors in some way, shape, or form. How that shakes out, we're not quite sure. And while I understand the need for revenue, what I would have much preferred to see is some sort of serious approach to spending reductions to help dig us out of this gap, because the tax increases, regardless of what they are, they do have diminishing returns at a certain point. And my concern is that the overall tax burden across the economy for ordinary Canadians right now is quite high. And so I'm not sure there is too much else the government can really sink its teeth into.
Do you agree, Kris? Do you feel, especially with this newly minted coalition, that we're just going to continually increase taxes, that the burden is just going to continue to be more burdensome on us?
Yeah, we do agree with David. It's a really good point that he's making. They need to dig themselves out of this hole. In fact, my federal colleague, Franco Terrazzano with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, is on the road right now with our debt clock. Our old debt clock, which used to look kind of like an old horse trailer that was converted and it had numbers in it, there wasn't enough room left in it to show the more than $1 trillion of debt that we're in. So now we have this huge new panel van with big screens on it, and we're trying to sound the alarm over the debt. And this budget does nothing to quell that alarm, because we're still going to be more than $1 trillion in debt by the end of this fiscal year. And they can try to put labels on it and say why they need to spend and where they're taking the money from. But at the end of the day, that number needs to start going down. They need to start reversing that debt. And so this is where we're pleading with the federal government, even if they went back to pre-pandemic level spending and then tightened up their purse strings a bit, they would be able to balance the budget within a few years. So we're not talking about drastic austerity level cuts here. Even if they went back to pre-pandemic level spending and were a bit more prudent, we'd be able to get within a balanced budget within a few years, but we're not seeing that. We're not hearing that in Chrystia Freeland's language. We're not seeing any formal projections, none of that. So this is where we're saying, folks, we need to pay attention here.